up guys, ShotMD here, another fun video today. We're going to be talking about Norlins, specifically the Norlin Era Les Pauls versus the current Gibson custom shops. Now, this is something that's been coming up a lot in forums and seems to be getting debated a lot recently. I think because, a few years ago, Norlin Era Les Pauls could be had for not too expensive of a price, relatively speaking. You could get them for, I think, $2,500 to $3,000, which was about the price of a regular Gibson Les Paul standard at the time. However, in the last few years, and definitely in the last 2 years, the Norlin Era prices have just skyrocketed. Most 70's Les Paul customs seem to be listing now for like $3,600 or even like $5,000-$6,000 depending on the condition, and that pretty much puts them in the same price range category as full-blown Gibson custom shop historic reissue guitar. Now, before I go further, I'll say right now, one is not better than the other. They are completely different guitars. I mean, in every way, in terms of how they sound, their specs, how they feel. It's like apples and oranges. And which one you should get really depends on what you're looking for and the features you're interested in. And that's what I'm going to get into today. Recently, obviously, I got my 1976 Les Paul Custom Black Beauty, but I was faced with the decision, do I want to get one of the custom shop historics for a similar price, or do I want to get this? And I actually did originally order a 57 reissue Black Beauty Les Paul Custom. I got it from Guitar Center used. It was an awesome guitar, but ultimately I returned it and I went with this, and I could not be happier. So I think it's important to kind of know what you want, what you're looking for, and I thought I'd just share my experience and why I picked this and some of the reasons and thinking I had behind that, so that you can hopefully make a decision yourself if you're between those two guitars. Before I go further, one thing I will say, one reason not to buy a Norlin is just because of the vintage status. I do think there's some cool factor to having a vintage guitar. I love that this has a history and story behind it. I believe this was played by a country player who gigged it for decades and took it out on the road, and you can tell it's been loved and played. It's just got really cool play wear on the neck. The gold has kind of faded away or started to, and there's just a lot of character to a guitar like this, and I really like that. But there's good and bad guitars from every era, from every year, from every model, especially with Gibsons. You could get a dud Les Paul or amazing Les Paul, and it just depends on that individual guitar. So just because it's old doesn't mean it's going to be a better guitar. I would recommend just assessing each guitar for what it is, regardless of the year it's from. And going into why I did pick it, not because it's vintage, I liked it because of the features, and that was a big part of why I went with the Norlin route. Now, the Norlin Era Les Pauls and the Gibson Custom Shop reissue Les Pauls are like night and day difference in terms of their features and their specs, and I'm going to be referring to features of my specific 76 Norlin Custom and the Custom Shop reissues I've tried. However, I will say Norlin Era was not known for their consistency, especially in specs. In early 70's Norlin Les Paul Custom will probably have different specs and features from a mid 70's to a late 70's. Earlier ones had things like a long neck tenon. They were made in the Kalamazoo factory. I think the T-tops might have been different. They had the pancake bodies. Get to the later part of the 70's, goes over to short neck tenon. One point I think they transitioned from maple necks to mahogany, and then they got rid of the pancake bodies and became full mahogany by 78. It's just kind of all over the place. So if you're looking at a Norlin Era Les Paul, definitely research the specific year you're considering, because you might have different specs from other years. And I'm actually going to take a quick moment here to show a picture of what I'm referring to and also correct myself from earlier. This is a photo I got from the My Les Paul forums, and at the very bottom you can see a long neck tenon, in the middle a transitional neck tenon, and at the very top a short neck tenon. Now, I mentioned that the early Norlins started off with long neck tenons. I believe they actually started off with transitional neck tenons in the early 70's and mahogany necks, and that's how they stayed until the mid 70's or so. And I believe around 1975 they switched over to maple necks and the short neck tenons, and that's how they stayed until the 80's. Around the mid 80's is when I believe they switched back to the mahogany necks. And same thing kind of goes for the custom shop historics. 2003 historic might be a little different from a 2020, but there's a lot more inconsistency in specs with the Norlin Era than you would with the Gibson Custom Shop. Now, a couple things that this guitar has and most Norlin Era guitars have that differ these from a Custom Shop Historic. My guitar has a 3-piece maple neck. Gibson Custom Shop Historic will usually have a mahogany neck. Another thing, the body. Mine is one of the pancake body Norlins. So this is actually a sandwich of mahogany, little maple slice, and mahogany here. It's not a solid one-piece mahogany. The historic Gibson Custom Shop Les Pauls are pretty much one-piece mahogany body. That's another difference. This has the T-top pickups. The Gibson Custom Shop Historics usually have some variant of a PAF. I think the 57 reissues used to have the 57 Classics. More recently, all the Custom Shop Historics have the custom buckers, and that has a whole different sound and vibe to it. Another thing is the neck profile. The Norlin Era is known for their slimmer necks, so if you like that, that's something the Norlins have. This has a really nice slim neck profile. The Gibson Custom Shop Historics, especially the 68 and 57 reissues, are known for their chunky, thicker necks. So if you prefer a thicker neck profile, the Custom Shop might make more sense. If you like thinner necks, that's a bonus with the Norlins. Another thing is the frets. The Custom Shop Les Pauls from Gibson have kind of your traditional fret wire, you know, the 50s, 60s style. The Norlin Era Les Pauls have very different frets, especially mine, which I'll actually get a close-up shot so you can see it better. Mine has very wide and low frets. I think the early ones might even have fretless wonders. I don't think mine are fretless wonder frets, but they are very low and wide, and that makes for a completely different playing experience. Whether you like it or not will depend on you. Personally, I like it. They're not quite as easy to bend on, but as far as sliding up and down the neck and playing, it's super smooth to have like these low wide frets, especially with the smooth ebony fretboard with that. So that's something I like, and those are a couple of differences in features. Another thing is that the Norlin Era guitars have the volute on the neck. Not sure if you'll be able to see it on mine. The Gibson Custom Shop Historics do not have the volute. So as you can see, there's just a whole slew of features. I mean, they're completely different guitars. They're both Les Pauls, but how they feel, how they sound, even how they look, it's not going to be the same, you know. And speaking of looks, also, I believe the Norlin Era uses the wider headstock from Gibson, whereas the Custom Shops use the more traditional, smaller, thinner headstock. So those are a couple things. Now, all these differences do make for a different experience in terms of playability and tone. My Norlin sounds very different from any of the other Les Pauls I have in any historic I've played, and others have echoed that as well online. One thing I love about the Norlins, they have a really like mid-focused, tight, intense, punchy sound to it. They do amazing for like high gain, hard rock, stuff like that. I'll show you right now. Here, just turn it up. As you can see, it's got monster tone to it, and I just love the sound. For the style of music I play, this suited me perfectly. Now the historic Gibson Custom Shops, like the 57 reissue, and especially like the 1960 reissues that I played, they had a very different sound. They were more like a warm, open, broad, airy tone to it. The controls on the historic were a little bit more sensitive with the pickups, so I could roll back the volume and tone and ride the controls and just get a lot more variety of sounds out of the Custom Shop, and it was a lot more sensitive to my picking and playing. This doesn't quite have that, but if you just want something with a hard-hitting, hard rock tone, this I think does it better than any of the Custom Shops. So it really just depends on the style you're looking for in the sound. And I mentioned the neck profile. For me, I love slim necks. I'm really into like, thinner neck profiles on Les Pauls. And for me, chunky necks just aren't quite as comfortable. And unfortunately, when I looked at the Custom Shop lineup for Les Paul Customs, you have the 57 reissue, you have the 68 reissue, and you have the regular, like more modern spec Les Paul Custom. All three are known for thicker necks, especially the 57 reissue and the 68 custom reissue. Both of those are known for their chunky neck profiles, and even the more modern regular Les Paul Custom has, I think, like a 50s neck. There really aren't any widely available Gibson Custom Shop Les Paul Customs with thinner, slimmer neck profiles. There's a few one-off runs and limited editions that have thinner necks, but they're not easy to find. So if you're like me, you like slimmer neck profiles, the Norlin absolutely wins out there. And this neck was way more comfortable to me than the 57 reissue that I originally had played and ordered. Now, another reason I went with the Norlin is the Rarity. You know, there's a ton of Gibson Custom Shop and historic guitars floating around, all with pretty similar, consistent specs as well. So if you want a historic or you want a custom shop, you're pretty easily going to find one, especially if you just look around a little bit. And I knew if down the line, if I ever wanted one, I could probably find one. However, I wasn't sure if I'd find a Norlin very easily in coming years. These are already not that easy to come by. I might have mentioned I looked around for months to find one in good condition, and Gibson doesn't even make anything like a Norlin. So if you want these features, that's pretty much the only way to go. A couple of things like I mentioned, the T-top pickups, the maple neck, and all those things that make it very particular in how it sounds and feels. There's nothing like that being made today, not from Gibson, at least not mass produced. Now, I'm just going to take another quick aside here and mention one current production Gibson that does come close to Norlin era specs, and that's the Adam Jones Signature Les Paul Custom in Silver Burst. Now, this specific guitar has a lot of Norlin specs because it's actually based on Adam Jones's 1979 Les Paul Custom. However, this guitar was made in very limited numbers. I don't believe you can buy these new anymore, and they sell for incredibly high prices on the used market. And on top of that, the Norlins that are available from the 70s, there's not a lot left in good condition. A lot of them, the ones that I found, had the original T-tops ripped out, had holes drilled in the body, needed a full refret. It wasn't easy to find one in good condition, and I wasn't sure if it would get any easier to find one in coming years. I think these are just going to get harder and harder to find, and the prices might go up more. So I just opted to get it now while I had one available. Same thing goes for the T-tops in terms of Rarity. Gibson doesn't make anything like T-tops now. The closest would be their T-type pickup, which is supposed to mimic these, but you can only get it in the CME exclusive SG, and you have to literally buy that SG guitar to get those pickups, and there's no other way to get aftermarket. A couple boutique makers like Brandon Mount I've heard makes good replicas, but again, T-tops are not easy to find, and the original ones are like $500 now, maybe even more if you go on Reverb. So for those reasons, the T-tops being harder and harder to find, especially original ones, the Norlin features, they just can't really get on any modern production guitar, and good condition ones being harder to find. I just said, you know what, let me get this while I can right now, because who knows, a few years there might not be as many of these available. Now, those are a couple of reasons that I wanted to go with the Norlin, and I'm very happy that I did. But there are reasons to go with the historic custom shop as well, and I think most people will. I'm probably in the minority in that I went with the Norlin over a custom shop. Most people I talk to tend to go with the custom shop, but there's a couple of reasons to do that. In general, the custom shop Gibsons are lighter, which is a huge benefit. The Norlin era Les Pauls are known to be boat anchors. Mine is on the lighter side, and it's 10 pounds. A lot of them are 11 pounds and up. Whereas most historic custom shop Les Pauls will tend to hover around the 8 to 9 pound range, so they're a lot easier on your back. A couple other things, I mentioned that the Gibson custom shops use the custom buckers, and those are a lot more dynamic. I don't think they do the high gain, tight sound as well as an Norlin, but if you want to ride the volume and tone controls, get a lot of nuanced sounds, and have something that responds to your picking dynamics, I think the custom buckers and the custom shop guitars will do better with that. If you like chunkier necks, custom shop's the way to go. The Norlin era, like I said, is known for their slimmer neck profiles. That was a bonus for me. Might be a con for you. There's a lot of options with neck profiles in the custom shop lineup in terms of thicker necks, and you got the R8s, you got the 57 reissue, the 68 reissue. Most of them are pretty thick, and if you do like thinner necks, you do have the R0s, and the R9s are kind of a nice in between. So you have a lot more options with neck profiles if you go custom shop, especially if you're more into thicker necks. And along with that, the custom shops are just less risky. Honestly, the risk of buying, an old guitar like this is you could inherit a lot of problems, and you really got to do your research and kind of know what you're looking for. I was very fortunate. I had a lot of good resources. I highly recommend the My Les Paul forum. There's a lot of really knowledgeable folks on there who helped me out. But a couple issues you might see, some of the Norlin guitars have a maxed out truss rod, and that's a problem. Some of them need a full refret. Some of them don't have the original T-tops. They were ripped out and placed with something else, and you might not know it unless you really look underneath and check everything. The wiring might not be all original. That might have been changed up. Could have a headstock rig that's just painted over and hidden. There's so many risks and issues you could have when you get an old guitar like this, and if you don't know what you're looking for, do your research, it could cost you. Gibson Custom Shop, on the other hand, especially more recent ones, you kind of know what you're in for. You know, they're going to be in better condition because they're newer. They obviously came out of the custom shop. They're going to be a lot more consistent in their quality and how good they are. And truthfully, if you're buying sight unseen and you're not sure what you're looking for, custom shop's probably going to be a safer bet in terms of getting a good, solid guitar without problems. Norlin Era, you take your risks and chances, especially if you're buying sight unseen. Again, I was fortunate, did my research, had a lot of knowledgeable folks to refer and talk to. All that helped, but it's definitely a lot more work to find a good Norlin than it is just a good, consistent custom shop. So anyways, those are a couple things to consider, you know, if you're in the market for one of these, if you're thinking Norlin, if you're thinking custom shop. Again, they're apples and oranges. For me, the Norlin made sense and I absolutely love it. I have zero regrets. It's an awesome guitar and it's pretty much suits exactly what I wanted and needed. But think about what you want and need and some of the points that I mentioned. Hopefully you find the one that's perfect for you. Anyways, thanks so much for tuning in, guys. Really appreciate you watching. Definitely like and subscribe if you enjoyed. I got more fun videos planned. And as always, stay safe, rock on, be well, guys. Bye.